Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering. That's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Shauna.
And we are super excited about this video because we haven't gotten a chance to do one in so long, but we figured things are opening up around North America at least. There's some actual in-person pre-releases happening, and you may be wanting to get ready for that. So we are bringing you a pre-release prep video. We're going to be talking about some of the best commons and uncommons for pre-release. The reason we focus on commons and uncommons is because we are firm believers that pre-release is one with your commons and uncommons. You are going to be opening 6 packs. That means you get 6 rares. You have no idea what those are going to be. And if you have my luck, it's probably land. You can't plan on that for winning, but what you can plan on are those commons and uncommons. So we are going to break that down for you today. But first, before we get started, for anybody that's joining us for the first time or has maybe never been to a pre-release, Shauna, what the heck is pre-release?
Well, a pre-release is a fun little sneak peek at new sets that are coming out. They usually happen a week before the set actually arrives. And what it is you get a cute little box with 6 packs of cards in it and an awesome die, as well as a special little promo card. You don't know what it is. It's usually a rare. It's usually something amazing with a date stamp on it. As well as some little instruction sheet in there and stuff too. So it's a nice little box, a nice little package. But then the plan is for you to build a 40 card deck with those 6 packs of cards. And usually where you go, your local game store will provide you with lands. So you don't have to worry about that. But you usually have about 17 lands in that 40 card deck and about 23 spells, usually like spells including creatures, usually about maybe 3 or 4 non-creature spells and the rest are creatures. It just kind of depends on what your strategy is and what you're doing. So we're gonna go through what we do when we build our quick little. Oh, I should tell you how long you have. You only have usually about 50 minutes to an hour to build a deck with those cards. So everyone starts at the same time and everyone's on the same playing field, really, because everyone has new cards that they chances are haven't seen before. So
and that includes sleeving time. So make sure you take that into consideration.
Exactly. So it's very fun, very high stress, but fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to talk about it in this video. I'm going to let Leslie tell you about how we're going to break down how we look for those cards when we're building our decks.
Yes, and that's actually a great segue. So when you're building a pre-release deck or any sealed format, Shauna and I like to use the bread principle. So what the heck is bread? It's not just those carbs that make you fat. It is a acronym that kind of tells you or reminds you what to look for when you're building a deck. So B is for bomb, R is for removal, E is for evasion, A is for aggro cards, and D is for dudes. So we'll talk about each of those sections a little bit more in depth when we get to them. But basically, if you remember those kind of in order, those are the most important things that you want to look for. You look through your pack for your bombs first, then your removal cards, and then your evasion, and then your aggro, and then your dudes or your filler cards are come after that. Once you've decided on what to do, usually with your bombs and removal, and then you'll kind of know what colors you're in. So that's kind of how we're breaking down and how we chose which cards we think you should look for when you're opening up your packs in those commons and uncommons. But there are a few things that are different with this set. This is a new set, and it has, as normal, some new mechanics. So what's the first one that's new, Shauna?
So the first thing is it's called Venture, not Adventure, just Venture. So it's very Dungeons and Dragons ish, this set. So you've got these special cards. There's only 3 of them. Lost Mine of Phandelver,
Yeah.
Phandelver, thank you. And Dungeon of the Mad Mage and Tomb of Annihilation. So a lot of you Dungeons and Dragons players might recognize some of those things. But basically what happens is you get a card that says you can venture into a dungeon, and you can pick one of those, and you start off with a counter in the very first entrance of whatever that dungeon is. And then every time you have another ability that says you venture, you move your counter correspondingly through those dungeons. You can't start another one until you finish the first one. You can do them over and over again if you want to, or you can pick a different one or whatever, but you can only have one going at a time. And once you've actually gone through the dungeon, if you're still alive, you've completed a dungeon. And there are cards that say if you've completed a dungeon, or I can't remember the phrasing exactly, but basically there's some benefits to completing the dungeon too. So there's usually nothing bad going on in the dungeons.
Oh, in the Tomb of Annihilation, there is some pretty bad stuff. But it's also the shortest dungeon, so.
Yes. And there's a major reward for getting to the end. So
yeah,
you want to do this. It's all about adventuring.
So there's another. Yeah. There's another 2 abilities. They're kind of new in this. The first one has to do with rolling d20s, because of course, as we all know, all as D&D fans know, when you do anything in Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to roll a d20. And so we have some rolling abilities. So for example, the genie the genie Windseer, normally it's just Jin, is a flying 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to roll a d20, and then whatever you roll, those things happen. Scry 1, Scry 2, Scry 3, and all the different rolling ones have different things that go off, and some of them have the ability to pay a certain amount and tap it to roll a die. And then there's all kinds of cards that whenever you roll a die, something happens. So there's a lot of rolling stuff happening in this. The other thing that's happening in this set is leveling up. Of course, that's a big part of D&D, and there's a bunch of enchantments that are class enchantments. So druid class is one example of those. It costs 2 to put out. It's an enchantment. It stays on the battlefield, and then you can pay into it to level it up. So you can just leave it at a simple level 1 enchantment, which is whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. But if you want, you can pay 3, and now you're on level 2. So you would just move your little token or your counter or whatever to level 2. And now you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and then level 3 happens after that, should you choose to use it. So it's really versatile and up to you. Those are kind of some of the things that are new to this set. We didn't pick a lot of those for our cards to watch for, but we're going to talk about why that is as we go. So what's our first section, Shauna?
Our first section is the bomb section, because that should be your number 1. So quite often your bombs are going to be in your rares and your mythic rares, except if you're Leslie.
Bland.
So quite often you can't rely on that bomb, or it doesn't fit with any of the other cards, which I've had happen to me. I don't have any way to support that card, so don't count on those being your bombs. But we have some other little bombs in here that we think you might like, and I'm going to let Leslie talk about her favorite things.
Sure. Well, there's 5 dragons in this set, and so you have the black, the white, the blue, the red, and the green dragons. So we'll just put those all up on the screen. But we have most of them are 4/4s. There's 1 5/5. They're basically flyers. So not only do they have evasion, but they often most of them have some kind of removal or effect that happens when it enters the battlefield, and then you're going to be swinging in. Of course, any bomb can die to removal, and that happens, but these are the things. Basically, a bomb is something that's going to win you the game. So we thought that that any of the dragons, because they're in any color and they're uncommon, would be decent things to watch for and be good bombs to put in your deck. Your bomb is also going to be kind of your higher cost things. You don't want too many high cost things, because otherwise someone's going to run you over before you get anything out. You want to try and keep your curve a little bit lower, but your bomb kind of is going to be that thing that costs a little bit more. And there's one other card that we thought might be a good bomb.
Yeah, the crazy purple worm here for us screen players that we love. So it's an 8/7 for 5 and 2 green, but it costs 2 colorless less to cast if a creature died this turn. So yeah, you can play that on your second main phase after you've done combat and swung with some little guys or something like that. So it's an 8/7 that you could potentially pay 5 for rather than 7. So that's pretty amazing. And it has ward too, and ward was a new mechanic from the last set that whenever a creature becomes the target of an ability, so to kill it or something, they have to pay 2 extra. So he's got a little bit of protection on him too.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to
Big,
win you the game.
beefy dude that's going to be really hard to kill. He doesn't have trample, but he's nice.
He's big.
So probably the most important section after you've decided on what cards are going to win you the game. And you know what? You might not have a bomb. That might happen. But you will have removal. So removal. It is the most important thing to worry about in pre-release, other than having dudes to kill the guy with. But we picked out some in all the colors that we thought would be good. The first one is Divine Smite. It is a 2 mana cost instant, and target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls phases out. If that permanent is black, exile it instead. So it's kind of conditional with the actual removal portion. It has to be on a black thing. But if they're swinging at you with that 8/7 and to win the game, you can phase it out as it swings, and yeah, it comes back in. But yeah,
You've got a breather for a second.
It's a little bit of a breather, and so there's nothing wrong with that as a start.
And then Minimus Containment for 2 and a white. It's a little enchantment aura. I always play with these pretty much in any sort of pre-release. There's always something that enchants a non-land permanent, which is really cool. That can enchant other things that are causing you problems. And it just becomes a treasure for that person. So it's a great way. They're gonna wanna get rid of it because it can't do anything else for them other than make mana for them. So making a treasure is not a bad thing.
And not a lot of people think about enchantment removal in their main board. So at least the first game, they're probably not going to be able to get rid of this. So that's a nice thing. Sure. So everybody needs a portable hole for 1 mana cost. It's an artifact. And when it enters the battlefield, you exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls with a mana value 2 or less until portable hole leaves the battlefield. Again, it's a little conditional, mana value 2 or less. But as you can see, there are definitely some cards out there that are mana value 2 or less that you might want to get rid of, especially those aggro cards. So this is a nice low cost thing that gets rid of that aggressive deck right off the bat.
And then there's the first of these really cool cards. All this, you hear something or you see something or you whatever.
You hear something.
Fun. Very Dungeons and Dragons. I love it. So you hear something on watch, which is a 1 and a white, an instant where you can choose one. You rouse the party and your creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn, which is a great combat trick. Or you can set off traps and deal 5 damage to target attacking creature for 2. So that's pretty awesome. That's a good way to get rid of creatures.
If this was a sorcery, we wouldn't have put it in there for removal, but because it was an instant, we put it in there. Our first blue one does exactly what blue should do, and it has an adorable tiny little sleeping dragon on it. I love it. Charmed Sleep for 1 and 2 blue. Enchant creature. The Charmed Sleep enters the battlefield. Tap enchanted creature, and it doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So as long as that enchantment is on there, it's just kind of sleeping, which is what a good sleep spell does.
Yeah. And then we have Power of Persuasion. So this is one of those rolling kind of dice. It's a sorcery for 2 and a blue, where you can choose a target creature an opponent controls, and you roll your d20. 1 to 9, you get to return it to its owner's hand. 10 to 19, its owner puts it on top of or bottom of their library. And 20, you gain control of it. So critical hit. Gain control of it until the end of your next turn. Turn.
You're not going to count on crits, so don't count on crits. You're going to fall somewhere between 10 and 19 is my guess.
Either way, it's a great way to get that stupid creature out of there.
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah.
Ray of Frost, one of my favorite spells to use as a wizard or a sorcerer in D&D, is a 2 mana cost enchantment, which has flash, which is great. Flash means that you can play it at instant speed. You get to enchant a creature, and when it enters the battlefield, if enchanted creature is red, then you tap it. As long as enchanted creature is red, it loses all abilities, and enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So there's 3 things that happen. They're all separate. The 2 at the top are just if it's red. However, the bottom one, enchanted creature, doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. You're going to have to be tricky on this one. This is one that you're going to want to, because it's instant speed, you're going to want to play probably during combat. If it's not a red creature, you won't be able to tap it. So don't think you can put it on the battlefield and just get rid of that black creature. That you have to wait till they tap their black dragon, and then it won't untap. So just be careful when you play that one if you're going to put it in.
And it is still going to do damage.
Yeah.
To you, but it won't be able to do damage again.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing. And then we have Split the Party. We love this card.
Oh, this is one of my favorites.
Oh, this is definitely Dungeons and Dragons.
That flavor text.
Yep.
Just don't.
For 3 and 2 blue. I don't know how many times that happened to us. Anyway.
Don't split the party.
Don't split the party. Choose target player. Return half of the creatures they control to their owner's hand. Rounded up.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Great for all of that. And if it's tokens, if they have tokens or things like that, then those things, when they return to their hand, don't exist anymore. But good removal there. You come to a river. What do you choose? I love this. It's like choose your own adventure. D&D. I love it. Do you fight the current and return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand? Or do you find a crossing? Target creature gets +1/+0 until the end of turn and can't be blocked. So there's some aggression that you could do in there, but we thought this would be good in the removal. Basically, again, doing what blue does best, returning things to their owner's hand, making them pay for them again while you're swinging in and doing some fun shenanigans.
Then we have this really cute little rogue character here. Relax, I'm a professional. Sorcery, checking for traps. 1 in a black. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. If an instant card or a card with flash is exiled this way, they lose 1 life. Otherwise, you lose a life. So you got to get a little bit of a slap on the hand for checking things out. But you get to see their hand and you get to get rid of something that's not good.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's a Demigorgons clutches. Everyone who has watched Stranger Things is very familiar with the Demigorgon. For 2 and a black is a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards, mills 2 cards, and loses 2 life. So there is a lot of removal there. Remember, removal is not just removing things from the battlefield. You take it out of their hand, you take it out of their deck. In pre-release specifically, you have a 40 card deck, so every card matters in this, and you want to make sure that what you put in matters, which means what they have in their deck matters as well. You're going to take stuff out of their hand, you're going to take stuff out of their deck, and you're going to make them lose 2 life. So that's a great card to put in.
Pretty awesome for 3. Devour Intellect for 1. It's a sorcery. Target opponent discards a card. If mana from a treasure was spent to cast the spell instead, that player reveals their hand and you choose the card that gets discarded. So there's going to be some treasure bonuses in here for sure. Keep an eye out for those.
And potentially get to see what they have.
Yeah.
Power Word Killed. Now, we have used this a few times in my D&D campaigns, and it is awesome. It is a 1 and a black for an instant. Destroy target non-angel, non-demon, non-devil, and non-dragon creature, which makes sense because in the D&D world, let's face it, you're not going to Power Word Kill any of those things. Maybe a devil. But just a plain old instant removal for any of their other creatures. So it's great.
Here's one of those cards that you get a benefit, a little extra boost if you've completed a dungeon. So a Precipitous Drop for 2 and a black. It's an aura that you put onto when it enters the battlefield. You do venture into a dungeon. And the enchanted creature, you put it onto one of their creatures, and it gets -2/-2, or it gets -5/-5 instead, as long as you've completed a dungeon. So once you complete that dungeon that you just started, it becomes -5/-5.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
So now they're on a clock. So you can put it out for -2/-2, and then suddenly it gets more. So that's actually great. I didn't even thought of that until just now. Ray of Enfeeblement for 1 mana is an instant. Target creature gets -4/-1 until the end of turn. If the creature is white, it gets -4/-4 until the end of turn. So there's a lot of cards in here that have this little conditional thing like I'm black and I hate white. So we put them in the removal because you know, they are good removal depending on who you're against, but you're probably going to just count on this as a -4, -1. It's not that great of removal, but it does remove the damage that might be coming in to you and give you some extra time. So
yeah. Burning Hands, a similar sort of thing. For 1 and a red, it's an instant that deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If the permanent is green, it deals 6 damage instead. 2 damage isn't going to kill a lot of things, but it might.
But 6 will.
6 will, probably for sure.
I am so glad I get to do the fireball because I am the queen of fireballs. I am sorcerer at heart. So this fireball costs 3 and 2 red. It's another roll thing. So it deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker just right off the bat. So 5 damage for 5. That's a good curve. And then you get to roll a d20 and do some extra stuff. So you're going to automatically be rolling. You're going to be doing 7 damage for 5, which is awesome on curve. But you also may get some additional things by doing that 2 damage to each player or each opponent if you're in commander. Yeah.
So Magic Missile for 1 and 2 red. It's a sorcery that can't be countered, which is really sweet. And you get to deal 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. So it's a pew 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 kind of thing, which is fun.
Lots of versatility there. Yeah. You find some prisoners is our next one. So what do? Do you break the chains and destroy target artifact? Or do you interrogate them and exile the top 3 cards of target opponent's library? Choose one of them until the end of the next turn. You may play that card. You may spend mana as though it's any mana of any color to cast it. So remember when we were talking about removing things from someone's library? I mean, artifact removal, you probably need it in this set. So that's okay. We're not recommending that you main board artifact removal and worry that much about that, but exiling the top 3 cards of their library and being able to play one of them, even if you can't play something, you get rid of 3 cards for 2 mana. That's awesome.
Choose your weapon. It's for 2 and a green. It's you choose your weapon. Are you going to do a 2-weapon fighting, which is double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn, something green loves to do, or archery, 5 damage to target creature with flying? Woohoo for me.
Yes, and what about flying in this set?
Oh, you saw the dragons, people.
Those are commons or uncommons, and there's rare dragons too.
There's rare dragons that are scary.
I think everybody in the set will have a dragon. You need flying removal. So Hunter's Mark is 3 and a green. This spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a blue permanent you don't control. It can't be countered, and target creature you control gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. Then it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. So we put it in this section basically because it is kind of a rabid bite with benefit. It does cost a little bit more to cast than what we would like, but if you're targeting a blue creature that you don't control, then ultimately it's going to only cost you 1. So that's a possible thing. But nonetheless, it is a kind of a rabid bite, and there's nothing wrong with that because sometimes you just need the green removal.
Green removal. Speaking of green removal, here is our old friend Plummet with new art and destroying target creature with flying. You're going to need this. At least have it in your sideboard for sure. You're going to get it. You need it.
So I like this one because it can go in any deck. Spiked Pit Trap. It's flash, and then so you can flash it out for 1. Then you can pay 5 and tap it to sacrifice it and choose a target creature. Then you roll a d20. So it's either going to do 5 damage to that creature, or it's going to do 5 damage to that creature, and you get a treasure token out of it. Either way, it does 5 damage for 5, and there's nothing wrong with having 5 damage handy for, again, those dragons that are going to need to be killed.
It's going to make me hesitant to play my big creature if I know you're going to kill it as soon as...
Yeah, exactly. You just put it out as a little insurance policy, right?
My insurance. Okay, and now we're into our evasion section. So these are cards that are going to get in there and do damage to the face. So they need flying or menace or trample or death touch or something like that. That's what we classify as having evasion because they're going to get in there and do
They're
something.
going to get around the other person's creatures in some
Exactly.
way.
Exactly. So the first one we have is a planar ally for 3 and 2 white. It's a 3/3 flying angel. Whenever it attacks, you venture into a dungeon. So you've got that dungeon thing happening, and it's a 3/3 flyer. It is for 5, but you've got that dungeon stuff started if you want to do that too. So that's kind of nice.
So Air Cult Elemental. The Air Cult is from the oh gosh, I played that D&D campaign too, but I can't remember now off the top of my head. I should have thought of it before I started that sentence. Anyways, it has Whirlwind. When it enters the battlefield, I get to return up to one other target creature to its owner's hand. That could be yours if you want an enter the battlefield effect, or it could be theirs. It's up to you. But again, a nice little 2/5 flyer. You can just have it sit there and be a nice blocker, or you can swing in for that damage when you need to.
And then we have the Ginny Windseer, which you saw before. It's a 3/3 flying Jinn that has the D20 stuff that we saw before with the scrying, depending on the roll. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And if you don't have a creature with flying, you can always enchant it with a flyer. So there's almost always at least one thing in each set that has like enchant or an artifact that gives something flying. They do work for you. That kite sail thing that we had in the last couple, it just did so much work, just giving your creatures flying. So this one basically does that, and when you deal combat damage to a player, you get to venture, so that helps you with your dungeon stuff that's going to go on, which you will use in this set.
Yeah. Guild Thief, which is 1/1 for 1 and a blue. It's a whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you're going to put a 1/1 counter on it, so he's just going to get bigger. And you can pay. It has cunning action. You can pay 3 and a blue, and it can't be blocked. So as soon as you have those can't be blocked cards, those do so much work for you. You have, so much work. It's awesome.
And you might like this little combat trick. You could use it as a combat trick, or you could just say, you know what, I'm going to give something flying and swing in for what I need. Mordecai's Polymorph for 2, so it's a good cost. It's an instant, and it basically turns a target creature into a 4/4 dragon with flying until the end of turn. So I love that. It's great. I wish it was a permanent, but you can't have all the things for 2.
You could turn the Guild Thief into that.
Yeah, exactly.
It would still get its counter.
Yes, because it doesn't say it loses all other abilities. It just gains flying. So then it
loses its creature type, but that's okay.
Yeah. And then when it deals combat damage to a player, it put a 1/1 counter on it. So it's
Fruit. I like that. Here is a card that I really like. It's a 4/4 for 5 Tiger Tribe Hunter. It's a human barbarian. I really like barbarians. I don't know why. It has trample. I love trample. And it has pack tactics. So this is new for me anyways. Whenever it attacks, if you attacked with creatures with a total power of 6 or greater this combat, you may sacrifice another creature. And then when you do, the hunter deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target creature. So it's just a really awesome way to get in that little bit more damage and get rid of stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Trample.
Yeah.
So another one with trample is our Owlbear for 5. It is a 4/4 trampler. So it's a little bit high, not that great on the mana curve, but it is common. So that's why. When it enters the battlefield, you're going to get an extra card. So you get some knowledge. But again, you get that trample damage. That's either they're going to have to sacrifice one of their bigger things to block it and kill it, or they're going to take some damage.
So then we're into our aggro section. I really, really like the Drider, which is a 4/3 for and a black. I like my black cards. I don't know. Yeah. This is an elf spider, which is so bizarre. It has reach, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it's going to create a 2/1 black spider creature token with menace and reach. So that's going to be crazy fun. You're going to be wanting to swing with that guy and making a whole bunch of spiders everywhere. So fun.
Gives me nightmares of the Underdark. Grim Wanderer is a goblin warlock with flash. He has a very tragic backstory. You can cast the spell only if a creature died this turn. He's a 5/3. So usually when we think of
Mm-hmm.
aggro cards, we think of things that have higher power than their butt. They're meant to swing because you're supposed to. It doesn't matter if they die.
It's not going
You
to
just
die.
want to get in for that damage and be quick and fast. So
Lightfoot Rogue for 1 and a black. It's a 2/1 with sneak attack. So whenever it attacks, you get to roll a d20, which is really, really good. Because that rolling of the d20 is going to give you death touch and bonuses. So 1 to 9 gets just the death touch to end of turn. You're not going to want to block it. 10 to 19, you get +1 and +0 and death touch. So you get both of those things. And if you get a 20, you get +3 and first strike and death touch. So anyway, it's going to be fun. Very aggro card.
So Manticore, believe it or not, this card for a little common that's a 4 mana cost 2/1, which seems ridiculous to pay and doesn't seem like a great card, is actually a pretty good card because it fits in the evasion category. It has some removal attached to it. It's flash, so you can pay it at instant speed, and it's a 2/1, so it's kind of fits that aggression thing. So basically flash flying, and when it enters the battlefield you get to destroy target creature an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. So it's a great way to block with your little 1/1 and then flash that in and kill one of their creatures that attacked you. Again, you're going to want to think about the timing on this and keep some mana up if you have it in your hand, but I like this little card for a common. It's pretty good.
You'll be doing the little pingy things or whatever and be able to play it. Yeah. Chaos Channeler. I really like this one too. It's a 2 for 2 and 2 red, a 4/3 human shaman that has wild magic surge. So whenever it attacks, you roll the d20 again. 1 to 9, you get to exile the top card of your library and play it this turn. 10 to 19, you get to exile 2 cards from the top of your library and be able to play them. And 20, exile the top 3 cards of your library and you may play them this turn. So this to me is a really good card for those red decks because when you're playing really aggro red, you just run out of cards. And this is a great way to get more cards, in my opinion. And it's a good dude, I think. But yeah.
Speaking of good cards that go with the Manticore, this is a little 1/1 for 1 with haste. It's a Goblin Javelineer. When it becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to target creature blocking it. So it doesn't just do 1 damage, it does 2. So it's essentially going to be a 2/2 if it's blocked. So they're probably just going to want to take the 1 damage, or perhaps you can flash in the Manticore and kill something if they've decided to block it, right? So
yeah, with a big creature or something.
Yeah.
Trickster. Okay, Hobgoblin Captain, the Goblin Barbarian. Here's another barbarian for me. It's a 1 and a red. It's a 3/1 with pack tactics. So there we are with the whenever it attacks, if you attack with creatures with total power of 6 or greater, this gains first strike until end of turn. That's really awesome if it's a 3/1 having first strike because it's going to kill something before it can be killed. So that's pretty good. It's pretty easy to get total power of 6.
Yeah.
You're being an aggro deck, it's pretty easy to have that. So.
And Hulking Bugbear is a little 3/3 for 3 with haste. Nothing wrong with that. 3/3 for 3 with haste. I mean, put that thing in there. It's great.
Then we have you come to the Knoll Camp. A little instant where you choose to intimidate them. Up to 2 target creatures can't block this turn. So you have to do that before the blockers are declared. Or you can fend them off. Target creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn. That's a good idea too.
And speaking of gnolls, when you're at the Gnoll Camp, you encounter Targnar, the Demon Fang Gnoll. It's a 2/2 for 2. It has pack tactics though. When it attacks, if you attack with creatures again with power 6 or greater, this combat it gets +1/+0 until the end of turn, and you can pay 2 and a green and a red to double its power and toughness until the end of turn, which is going to be super. So it's maybe going to be a 6/4 if you attack with a bunch of stuff all at the same time. Be aggressive. Be aggressive.
Yeah, do it. If you're in green and red, you should be doing it. Iron
Ooh.
Golem for 4. It's a 5/3 vigilance artifact creature, and you just have to swing with it.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
The
Just
definition
swing.
of aggro. It's a big 5/3. It has vigilance though, so that is really cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's very handy.
So we're
Okay.
into the last section, which is kind of our dudes and our filler cards. So once you've kind of figured out like your removal, your evasion, your aggro, those are the important things. Now you have to fill out your deck with other cards. And these are cards that are going to be on curve. Most of them should be creatures, like you want dudes in your deck. I mean, I don't know. There have been pre-releases that we've been to where someone has managed to pull off a deck that has a bunch of spells and counter spells in it, and it does okay.
Yeah.
But
Spells matter stuff.
yeah, but I'm not sure that spells matter that much in this set. So you want some dudes. So the first dude that you might want to put in there is a Devoted Paladin for 5. It's a 4/4. So it's a little low on the or little off on the mana curve, but because it costs 5 for 4/4, but it has Beacon of Hope, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until the end of turn. So anything that is kind of on curve with an upside is considered in our mind a dude or a filler. Yeah.
Boomstalker, it's a 2/3. I like having a 3 but for 2 and a white. And as long as you've completed a dungeon, it does have double strike. So that's kind of nice. So it's just got the little bonus with the dungeon, but having a 2/3 out there isn't a bad thing.
Yeah. And another one that's a nice little filler, 4 mana, cost 3/4. When Veteran Dungeoneer enters the battlefield, again, you get to venture into the dungeon. Most of these filler cards, the ability is just kind of like an extra thing, but 3/4 for 4, there's nothing wrong with that.
Then we have a 3/2 for 3, the Displacer Beast, Cat Beast. When it enters the battlefield, you venture into the dungeon. But it also has Displacement, which is for 3 and a blue. Return it to its owner's hand. So you've got some protection built into it. And you can keep doing that, bringing it back out again to do the whole dungeon thing.
Yeah. Eccentric Apprentice is a 2/2 with flying, which is typically a 2/2 with flying for 3, which is typically evasion. However, we didn't think this one kind of was one of those cards that you should put in your deck for the evasion cost. It was just kind of meh. It was okay. But when it enters the battlefield, you get to venture into a dungeon, and then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've completed a dungeon, up to 1 target creature becomes a bird with base power and toughness of 1/1 and flying until the end of turn. So you can maybe create some flyers. But yeah, a little bit. It would be a decent filler.
Yeah. Scion of Stygia, I don't know. It's a 2/1 for 3 flash, so that's always nice. It has Cone of Cold. When it enters the battlefield, choose target creature an opponent controls. Then you roll the d20, and 1 to 9 you tap that creature, or 10 to 20 you tap that creature, and it doesn't untap. So it's got that flash on there, which is really handy.
I might even move that up into the removal section for blue if you're in blue.
Especially if you don't have anything else. It's nice to have that removal on a stick.
It's a better card than we thought when we first put it in here.
Yeah.
So the worst thing that can happen when you're in a city is when you see a guard approach, which happens to be our next card. For 1 mana, you have an instant, and you can choose to distract the guard by tapping target creature, or you could choose to hide. Target creature you control gains hexproof until the end of turn. We didn't really think this deserved main board, but we thought if you were in blue, this is a nice little filler card that can help you with some of those other things that you're trying to do.
It's got good blue shenanigan stuff.
Yeah.
Trickster's Talisman for 1. It's an artifact equipment that has Invoke Duplicity. So equipped creature gets +1/+1. It has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice the talisman. And if you do, you create a token that's a copy of this creature. And the equip cost is 2, which isn't bad. So it's a great way to maybe copy some of your big stuff, but you lose the talisman as soon as you do that once. So it's kind of like a little bit hard to make work, but you could. So that's why it's in there as a filler.
Our first black one is one that we kind of talked about a little bit, didn't we? This one about whether it should be in the bomb section or not. So the reason we didn't put it in the bomb section is because it does have a fairly high mana cost, and for what it is, yes, it's a 6/5, but it's good if you're in black and you can put it in there, but you don't want to fill your deck too big with. If it's the only bomb you have, then great, but um, some of the abilities that it has aren't awesome. So when it enters the battlefield, you get to each opponent sacrifices an enchantment. They may not have an enchantment, so that may not matter. Creatures you control gain menace until the end of turn. So again, you might not have any creatures when you need to put this out. So that's why we put it in the filler section. It's not necessarily one to overlook, but it's only filler.
And then we have Yuanti Fangblade, 2/2 for 3. It's our little death toucher. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to venture into the dungeon. So chances are pretty good that it's going to be able to do some damage. It's got death touch, but it dies to removal pretty easily.
This next one is also one that could be a potential bomb. Earth Called Elemental for 6. It's a 6/6, so it's right on curve. When it enters the battlefield, you get to roll, and each player sacrifices a permanent, each opponent sacrifices a permanent, or each opponent sacrifices 2 permanents. So it's actually really good on the removal, but there is a potential that you may have to sacrifice a permanent. So when you play this, because you don't know what the dice is going to do, please make sure that you have something else on the battlefield that you can sacrifice that you don't care about. Now, it is each player sacrifices a permanent, so that could be land if that's the only other thing that you can sacrifice.
Yeah. Hoarding Ogre for 3 and a red. It's a 3/3, and whenever it attacks, you roll the d20, and that 1 to 9 gives you a treasure token, 10 to 19 gives you 2, and 20 gives you 3. So it's just a little way to get some more treasure tokens. So it depends if you're wanting to do that kind of stuff.
It's okay, filler. Jaded Sellsword is a dragon warrior. He's 4/3. He's kind of aggressive. When he enters the battlefield, if mana from treasure was spent to cast it, it gains first strike and haste until the end of turn. So in order to make that work, you do have to have treasures and things like that going on. Otherwise, if you're just thinking of it as a dude, it is a 4/3 for 4, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Then we have the Boulette, which is a 3/3 for 4 beast that at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. So I really like that kind of stuff, especially if you're playing some black as well. Like your stuff is dying, you're being aggressive. This guy's going to get bigger. They need to deal with it. So it's a good filler that could potentially be a bomb for you if you're careful.
You do not want to encounter those in D&D.
No.
Circle of the Moon Druid. We like this card. We still think it's just filler because it's a 2/4 for 3, but when it has bear form. So as long as it's your turn, Circle of the Moon Druid is a bear with a base power of 4/2. So when you're going to be attacking, it's a 4/2, and when you're going to be blocking, it's a 2/4, which is kind of fun. I would definitely put this in green for filler.
Yeah. Then the Knoll Hunter, it's a 2/2 for 2, which is nothing wrong with that. And it has pack tactics. Whenever it attacks, if you attack with creatures with total power of 6 or greater, you put a counter on it. So he's just going to get bigger too. So it might work out in your favor.
Yep, and we talked about those flyers and needing to worry about them. Intrepid Outlander is a 2/3 with reach for 2, and it has pack tactics. So again, that's if you attack with it in 6 power toughness, it allows you to venture. The pack tactics is kind of irrelevant, but a 2/3 with reach for 2 is really probably a good thing for this set.
Yep. And the Underdark Basilisk, 1/2 for 2, a Death Toucher blocker, basically. And having a 2 but makes it survive a little bit there. So that's kind of nice.
And we have a Wandering Troubadour. Look at that guy and his nice little loot. Everyone's following him and having a gay old time. He is a dragon bard. At the beginning of your end step, if you had a land enter the battlefield under your control, you get to venture into a dungeon. But it is a 4/2 for 4. And so again, that's a nice little card to fill out your deck.
And we've got the Trelicera Moon Dancer, Celestia Goddess here, a legendary creature, elf cleric as a 2/2 for a green and a white. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on it, and scry, which is really nice. So if you've got that some life gain stuff happening, and there is some in the set, but not a ton, it's not something to rely on, but it's a good little 2/2 just by itself if you need to fill in some 2/2s.
And this next one is actually a fairly good card, especially if you're, I might, if I find this, actually consider going into blue and black because of it. It might push me that way just because it's a 1/3 for 2. But when it deals combat damage to a player, this is going to be the bane of my existence when standard hits. But that player loses 1 life. So not only the one from hitting it, they lose another. So it's 2. And they mill a card. And you gain a life. And you get to scry, which is so much stuff that happens just for hitting. And when you attack, you can pay 2. If you do, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So it has the ability to make itself unblockable. So all those things will happen just because you have enough mana to pay for it, which is a really good card.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
Yeah. I love it.
We may be underestimating this card, folks.
Yeah. I don't think it, I mean, it hits evasion. So we probably could have moved it up higher in the, and it does mill, so removal. You know what? If you get this card, I would definitely consider going black and blue. They'll be black and blue after you're done.
Oh, yes. Yes.
See what I did there?
Black and blue. Beat you up.
I'm so terrible. So terrible.
Then we have some honorable mentions and other things to consider. So, yeah, there was lots of stuff in this set that is different this time, and with the whole dungeon thing, do you want to go that way? There is some lifelink. There is some +1 counters. There's lots of flying. There's lots of crazy things going on. So
we also wanted to talk about, I think, Shauna, correct me if I'm wrong, some of the things that, the reason that at first glance you might go, well, why wouldn't you put this in the deck? And the reasons why we didn't think it was great for Prerelease. So that's what some of these cards are good as well.
So we've got Dragon's Disciple. It's a 1/3 for 2, and as it enters the battlefield, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand. If you do, or if you control a dragon, it gets a +1 counter. And then dragons you control have ward 1. So this is that whole dragon tribal thing. If you have dragons, this is an okay card to have in there, but it's not gonna do a lot for you. It's going to be really hard to make that happen, even if you have 2 dragons. It's just, it never fails. I'm being negative, I guess, but it never fails that you try to do something like that.
Don't fall in the trap.
Yeah. It doesn't work.
So the other one that I really like is Feywild Trickster, but it's another one that could be that trap, right? So you look at it and it's a 2/2 for 3, but when you roll 1 or more dice, you get to create a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. So you're going to create, you see this card and you're like, I'm going to create a bunch of little 1/1s and swing in. But you have to have things happening in your deck that allow you to roll dice. So if you have a bunch of stuff that allows you to do that, then this is a great card. If you don't, then don't put that in your deck. So just consider those things when you're deciding what to put in. Do I have enough in my deck to support making this card work?
Exactly. Without taking away from other things.
Yeah.
And so same with this card. This is the Lurking Roper. And when I first saw this card, I was like, ooh, 4/5 for 2 and a green. I think everyone's going to do that. What? 4/5 for 3? And it's a horror that it comes in. It doesn't untap during your untap step. So he can sit there, but as soon as you swing with him, you're not going to be able to untap him. So you have to be able to gain life to untap it. So like we were saying, there's some life gain in this deck, but not a lot, or in this set, but not a lot. So you'd have to have quite a bit to make that really worthwhile, to make this really work for you. It's kind of going to be a one-hit wonder sort of thing otherwise. So you might want to do that, but think about it. If you put that in your 3 spot and you're not having a flyer in there that you could do tons of damage with, I would rather have the flyer in there than this guy who's only going to hit once.
Yeah. But I mean, it is worthy of an honorable mention, right?
Exactly.
Another card that's worthy of an honorable mention is this next one, Eyes of the Beholder, and no one wants to find a beholder. This is a
Yeah.
great card. I mean, really, honestly, it's an instant. It does -11 until the end of turn to
Mhm.
target creature. It will kill anything that they have on their board. It's a great card to have. However, it does cost 6. So, are you going to be able to play it? Maybe. Definitely have this in your sideboard just in case you have somebody with a bunch of big beefy things, but you're better off playing lower mana cost removal if you can. If
Mhm.
this is the only removal that you have, like me, then you're going to play it.
Yep. Speaking of removal, we've got an improvised weaponry for 2 and a red. It's a sorcery, and deals 2 damage to any target, and you get to create a treasure. So this is sorcery speed, so they're going to see it coming. It has to be. It's only 2 damage, but it is to any target, and you do get to create a treasure. So it's okay removal, but it's a little bit costly to do
Mm-hmm.
kind of little tiny bits.
Yeah.
And at sorcery speed, you can't do a combat trick. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. And the next one, Rust Monster. This is another one that if you have nothing else, this would be a good one to put in. So for 2 and a red, it's a 2/1, so it has a little bit of aggression. It's a first strike, and you can sacrifice an artifact to give it +2/+0 until the end of turn. So it's kind of conditional, but there are ways of making this work if you have a bunch of artifacts. But again, don't fall into the trap of thinking that you're going to be able to win with this card because you're probably not.
Wild shape. It's
Well, we liked this one a lot.
yeah, it's pretty cool. For one, you're going to use it to suddenly change one of your creatures into a turtle with hexproof, or a spider with reach, or an elephant with trample. So it's going to be very, very situational. If you suddenly need something with reach that's going to survive, you can do that. If you need something that they're going to remove and you're going to just turn it into a turtle that can't be touched, right? Like, so it's going to be handy for those kinds of moments, but it's really, really conditional of when you're going to need that.
Well, in a lot of these, we talked about being good sideboard cards where
Yes.
you sleeve them up, have them in your
Yeah.
sideboard, because if you notice certain things happening, then during game 2, then you
Yeah.
can bring them in. So this next one is another good example of that. So you find a cursed idol. What do you do? Do you choose to smash it, destroy target artifact, lift the curse, destroy target enchantment, or steal its eyes, create a treasure token, and venture into a dungeon? So lots of versatility on this one. Do you know for sure if you're going to have artifacts or enchantments to kill? You don't. But if you are playing against someone that has a lot of those in their deck, then you might want to sideboard this in.
Yeah. So I've got some multicolored uncommons here.
These
The
are our
first one,
trap cards.
yeah, trapped, because it's 5/3 for 4 in this case. So it is a each creature you control gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it, and you may pay 0 rather than pay the equipment cost of the first equip ability you activate each turn. In pre-release, I've tried to do the equipment thing, and you have nothing but equipment and nothing to attach it to. It happens all the time. So that equipment is going to, you have very few spots in your deck, right? Because you only have a 40 card deck. So the equipment is taking a spot away from a creature. So you really need to weigh out how much equipment you want to use in your decks. And I don't know, every time I've tried it, it has not gone well.
And if you're only going to put 2 or 3 in your deck, then this
And
guy is irrelevant.
yeah,
So
I
don't
see
fall
it.
into that trap. I mean, he
Yeah,
is a 5/3 for
five
4.
three.
So you could use him as a filler. He's a good filler card, but
Mm-hmm.
if you don't take into consideration his abilities, but don't expect to win with him. Borrowing the Clan Undur. Is that how you say it? He's
Something
a
like
dwarf
that.
cleric. This is similar. It's a 3/3 for 4. And when it enters the battlefield, you're going to venture into a dungeon. When he attacks, you return up to 1 creature card with a mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you've completed a dungeon, this is very reliant on dungeoning, as
Mm-hmm.
well as having a creature in your graveyard that's value 3 or less. Keep wanting to say converted mana cost, but mana value 3 or less. So because it's so conditional, I would use him as filler, but again, don't expect to kind of build around him.
Yeah. And same with this one. This is Faraday, Devil's Chosen. It's a for 4. It's a 3/3, and Dark One's Own Luck. It says Dark One's Own Luck. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, it gains flying and menace until end of turn. If any of those results was 10 or higher, you get to draw a card. So very reliant on that whole dice rolling thing. You may never see the cards that roll the dice, so he never has that ability happen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but we would love to hear if you get one of those 3 cards and are able to make it work during pre-release, because stranger things have happened, and I think that would be really cool. All really good cards and definitely worthy of mentioning today.
For sure.
And the last one that we have is Dungeon Map. So the reason we put this one on honorable mentions is because it is a 3 mana cost artifact that gets you mana, so it's going to help you with that ramp. And if you are doing the venturing into the dungeon, this just gets you that much further into venturing when you are later on in the game and you have lots of mana and you don't have anything else to do with it. You can still get benefits from those things happening in the dungeon. So there's nothing wrong with putting a dungeon map in your at least in your sideboard, to have handy for if you want to kind of escalate that dungeoning.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for this time. We hope you have a wonderful pre-release. Enjoy and be as safe as possible. Let us know what you think people should watch for in their pre-releases or limited games with this stuff. If you like what you saw, please hit the like and subscribe button down there, wherever it is. You can also find us on Twitch regularly and 3 times a week. And reach out to us on Twitter and say hi and come and bug us. And we have lots of fun. We love talking to you guys. And in the tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.